Hey y'all, this is just a quick video. Been playing recently and heard some unwanted key noise coming from that right there, and that's the tilting B flat mechanism. It's a little rattly, and basically what's going on here, if you look at the C sharp key, there's a little stem that leads to low B flat key via this little lever right here, which can actually be removed by itself. Basically what's happening is it needs grease, and without the grease, the Teflon tubing in there is hitting the metal. It's a little bit noisier than it should be, and if left untreated, friction will build up on that little Teflon sleeve right there, and it will pop off. So you'll have direct metal on metal, which will be even louder, and it will also wear down the stem and the inside of that piece right there. So we're going to take care of that today. And the other issue I noticed when working through here is when I'm pressing the C sharp key down itself, see how there's lost motion right there before I'm even activating the mechanism? That's being caused by compression of that felt right there. So we're just going to replace that while I'm in here. For this isn't going to be too hard. The G sharp key actually has its own set of shoulder point screws. So all I have to do is remove one of them. The whole lever will come off, and then I'll have access directly to that cork. So basically, you just scrape that off. Use a solvent to get rid of the existing glue, and then fit a piece of felt in there that will accommodate that gap that is set in there by the action of the mechanism. So basically, if you hear anything like this, you could use any type of synthetic grease. I like plumber's grease myself. I haven't had a issue with that. You don't want to use anything that's has a very high viscosity or is extremely thick, but I find that plumber's grease actually works pretty well for this. So I'm going to tear that apart and we'll go from there. And the first thing I want to do, since I'm going to remove the G sharp key first before doing the lube work, pulling this out, you have the potential of distorting the spring there. So what you want to do is grab your spring hook, pull that off. Now that spring is disarmed, so I could pull off the rest of the mechanism here without potentially damaging that. And then whenever I put this back on, I just, grab it with the spring hook and put it right back onto the cradle. Okay, and now we have the point screw's been removed. There it is. And actually, you can see right there a little grime on it. It's not too, it's starting to get a little bit dirty, dusty, but it's not overly sticky yet. While I'm in here, I'm going to clean this particular one, but and re-oil it. But probably in another 6 months, I'm going to go through the entire mechanism, pull everything apart, and re-oil it. Maybe I'll do that sooner if time allows, but basically that's it right there. So I'm going to take a piece of sheet felt, cut off a new piece that's a little bit thicker than what we have there, and fit that underneath the B key. And this is such a small job. I'm actually just basically doing this on my lap on a little box that I have. But in order to cut the felt properly, in this case, just easiest just to put the key right on top of it. I'm using an X-Acto knife and just basically just punching it right out like that. Nothing too hard, and we'll get that glued and onto the piece and back under where it should be. All right, and the screw's been cleaned, re-oiled. Spring was put back into place, reassembled, and you see we took care of that lost motion, which in of itself actually took care of a lot of the rattling to begin with, but This has always been my point of contention with like the tilting B-flat mechanism is you always have to maintain this. This is a Salmer Paris Super Action 80 horn, so I mean it's not like it isn't well made, but they're just still a pain to maintain. I prefer like Yamaha's non-tilting version on the old 61s, and of course their 20 series horns, just because under the fingers it feels just as well, and you don't have to deal with this. But the major point with the C-sharp key, with the compression of the felt, and it looks like I got some fibers I need to... Oh, no, that's just the camera picking up some tarnish. With the compression of the felt and bumper materials, that actually happens all throughout the horn. The more you're playing, it's just an inevitability of playing. So it's something you should always keep an eye out on. Lost motion of the keys, especially the stack keys, lower stack in particular, because once those bumper materials start compressing, they're actually offsetting other keys in the mechanism and creating leaks. So this is where it comes in handy to, you know, go to a tech every 6 months to a year so they could pretty much accommodate for the slack. Or if you're a do-it-yourselfer, it just pays off to pay attention to what's going on with your horn and how to get into the little nooks and crannies and replace those felts and corks as needed. So I'm going to pull off the B-flat key right now, take care of that, and we're going to just grease that up. And that is actually the little rod that's holding in that low B-flat key. I actually had just cleaned this out and oiled it maybe 6 months ago, if that. The oil still feels slick. It's not sticky, which is actually what you're really wanting to pay attention to. Because if it gets sticky, then you have the potential of key binding. As is right now, dust and particulates do get in there, but that happens so frequently and so often. Like, if you're really worried about everything looking pristine and clean, you'll be pulling every rod and screw apart and re-cleaning them probably every 3 months. So, I mean, pay attention to feel. If you have the time and just, want to tear apart your horn, go ahead and do it every 3 to 6 months. But I usually hold off for about a year. Or if anything, it just becomes unusually tacky. Playing outdoors, humidity gets in there and starts breaking down the oil a little bit faster. If you're playing near an ocean, you have salt water to contend with. So keep environmental factors in mind as you're planning ahead and adjusting your action or keeping it oiled. And with that screw out, we should just be able to pop that right off. Then you see there is the Teflon shrink tubing, and we're just going to put in a healthy amount of grease up on there and then in there, and that should solve our problem. And, well, since this is a little bit more exposed, grime, particulates, felt from your case gets in there a little bit easier than most other parts. I am actually going to wipe down the existing grease, just make it look a little bit nicer. Okay, and I got that all lubed up, and let's see if I could do this from looking at the camera as I'm talking here. Maybe not. Okay, let me just try to hold it steady as I'm staring at this. But what I ended up using is look at the plumber's grease, then thinking about things that a saxophonist would have on hand, and realize that cork grease is actually the correct thickness that you would need. So there you have it. If you're a saxophonist interested in quieting a mechanism, give cork grease a try. That will work, and that will hold up. You could use any type of grease of around that viscosity and thickness. Make sure that it is not organic. If it's organic, it will break down and smell like rotting food. So that is basically it, and that's how you silence that mechanism.